All right, Working Dog Radio, broadcasting to Bite. We are back. I am Ted Summers from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and noticeably absent tonight is our co-host from Canton, Ohio, Eric. Eric, if anybody watched the last episode, I love the guy to death, but he looked like shit, and he hadn't shaved in 3 days, which is super unlike him because he can't grow a beard. So, in hindsight, the next morning we found out that Eric got the Rona. So he's doing fine. By the time this airs, I'm sure he will be back yelling at people and being angry at whoever and me or whoever. So he's going to be fine. But yeah, that was what was going on. And we decided to do this episode since we have two guests. I'm going to do it by myself. And it was one of these episodes that Eric and I and the rest of us here have really kind of like focused on in terms of kind of broadening what WDR is bringing. So we've done some of these episodes. We did an episode with one of the conservation dogs from Africa, which focused on more of the poaching aspect, and those were the tracking dogs. Tonight we have guests from Hawaii. We have Kyoko and Michelle, who are part of the Conservation Dogs of Hawaiʻi, which are focused on the conservation component and the research and ecological detection dogs in the state of Hawaii. For our listeners not in the United States, Hawaii is part of the United States, but it's on an island like way, way off the California coast by itself. It's its own ecosystem. It does its own thing. So they have a lot of unique ecological and environmental problems that are not prevalent on the mainland here in the United States. So with that, I'm going to introduce our two guests. First of all, we have Kyoko. Hi, how are you?
Hi, good to meet you.
Good. So you are the trainer with the with CDH with Conservation Dogs of Hawaii, correct?
Yes, I'm the trainer and the main instructor, and I founded the organization a couple of years ago. I also run my own private business, Country Canine, which does nose work for pet dogs and ecological detection dog services.
So give us a little bit of background on you first, and then we'll go to Michelle, and then we'll kind of do the background on the on CDH.
Sure. So in 2008, I started out as a pet dog trainer, doing obedience and teaching manners, behavior modification, and that type of thing. And I enjoyed it, but I found that most of it was really about coaching people, not necessarily training dogs. So I went to the APDT conference, a pet dog trainer conference one year, and saw a seminar that the NACSW founders were teaching on nose work. And, I'd never heard of that. I was amazed. I loved it. I said, this is what I'm going to do. So I came home, started doing it with my pet dog, and then eventually started teaching classes to, the pet dog people on Oahu. So that kind of became my main focus over just regular training. And around the same time, I also was hired by a local wind farm to train some of their dogs to do endangered bird and bat fatality detection. So I kind of got into the whole ecological side at the same time as the pet dog work.
That's super interesting. So those acronyms you threw out, like I'm super familiar with the law enforcement stuff. So what conference did you go to?
Oh, I'm sorry. APDT is the Association of Pet Dog Trainers, I think.
Okay.
And then NACSW is the National Association of Canine Scent Work. Okay. Let's see, what other acronyms did I use?
Right. Well, and some of this stuff will be kind of in the show notes, and because I can tell you right now, like we will get questions, like we'll get emails or Instagram things or whatever else. So, you guys, like you started doing like the bat and the bird stuff for the wind farm there locally in Hawaii.
Yes.
Okay. So, when did you kind of decide that like, oh, there's an actual need here for this thing?
Well, for me, I came from a dog training background, so I had no idea. Even while I was working at the wind farm, I kind of was doing it more just because it was fun to do this with the dogs and not really thinking about the ecology and biology. But towards maybe like the end of my employment there, a few years, I started to think, I think it might be more fun to explore new other applications because dogs are so good at it. So I guess it was after a few years of working at the wind farm that I started, doing a little bit more research, reaching out to other people, biologists. And I think that's around when I met Michelle as well.
Right. So speaking of which, our second guest is Michelle Reynolds. Michelle, how
I'm
are
good.
you?
How are you?
We are doing well. So you are the science advisor for CDH.
That's right. I'm also an ecologist, and I've spent most of my career in the Hawaiian Islands, and I've been involved with endangered species research, biosecurity, and studying disease pathogens of our unique island ecosystems.
So, and that's kind of where, like I said, talked about at the beginning, like for those listening, I mean, the United States people know, but a lot of the people who don't know that like Hawaii is its own like thing. Like it's its own place. It has its own ecology. It's its own ecosystem. It has its own weather. It has its own everything separate from the rest of the
That's
country.
right. It's
so
actually the most isolated archipelago in the world. It's farther away from any other island from a continental landmass. So it is really out there.
Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, I know it's a long flight from San Francisco. So, to kind of discuss your role a little bit for how you and Kyoko met and the role that you play for CDH.
So the role as science advisor is pretty new. It's an exciting opportunity to try to help the organization with matching the need in ecology with the dog's special ability. So I can help with topics like training aids, like helping to identify different life stages that might be hard to detect for biologists, but could be easier to detect for canines. And also just having the in with the ecological community when someone complains that they can't find something, I can suggest an alternative method, and that method is canine detection. Works for all kinds of applications that might be too hard to do another way.
Okay, so before we kind of talk about how the dogs are used, this seems to be like the pattern for any time we use dogs. There's a problem that we identify, and then there's, like you said, there's like the dog's superior ability to smell stuff. Like that's their thing, right? Like, in any industry, whether it's law enforcement or what we're talking about here or in the military, it is routinely that the dog's nose is the way to the answer of whatever question we've got going on. So what specific problem was Hawaii dealing with that was like, you know what, we have got to find a way to detect or do with this? Like, in law enforcement, it's easy. We find drugs and bombs. In military, same thing. They find drugs and bombs. If we find people, like, it's pretty straightforward. I assume that with this, we're also finding something. You're not biting people. So what are you guys looking for? Like, what was the problem that you guys needed the dogs for that you couldn't address any other way?
I'll tell you about the first problem and how I met Kyoko and how I came to using canines and trying to learn more about them was a disease that kills endangered ducks. So these ducks will keel over really quickly. And in order to stop the mass die-off of the endangered ducks, you have to find the carcasses. And so one carcass could cause the carcasses of 100 other ducks. And so it spreads through the food web. So when one duck dies, the flies and invertebrates start to break down that carcass. And if the duck has ingested a spore from a bacteria that can occur in these wetlands, they essentially get food poisoning. And so all the ducks get food poisoning, and you have to find all the carcasses to stop the outbreak. And a lot of times these wetlands have dense vegetation. The one where I was working also had agricultural leases where taro, which is a really important cultural and food crop in Hawaii. So the humans were trying to collect these carcasses and not doing a very good job because it was a lot of area to cover. The ducks would die, kind of tucked away under the vegetation. And I started, thinking more about detection dogs and was able to get a grant for an efficacy test, so an actual experiment. And of course, I had not worked with detector dogs. So my employer sent me to Tar Heel Canine School for dog trainers to learn a little bit more about how canine detection works.
Yeah, go see Bradshaw.
Yeah, and Jerry actually.
He's been on the podcast several times.
He connected me with other people that have used canines for avian botulism and with another handler. And then we were able to bring Kyoko on as the main trainer and handler. And she had 2 really super detection dogs and a lot of creativity and innovation to make this project happen.
So yeah, on that note, Kyoko, so you get approached and they're like, "Hey, do you want to go find bird botulism?" And you're like, "What was the reaction?" Because I know what mine would be. Mine would be like, "What?" Because we've been asked. We have another project that we're working on now that we're going to use dogs to find another like kind of bio thing. And it's kind of a side project. But when it first popped up, I was like, "Do you what now? I don't even know what this is. Like, what do you want me to find? Like, where is this? What is it? Like, had you heard of this? Like, was this new to you? Or how did this conversation happen?"
Yeah, it's been a while, so I don't remember the details, but I hadn't heard of avian botulism. I just knew that they were hiring for, a conservation related position. And I said, heck yeah, because at the time I was kind of ready to move on from my wind farm job. And so I bid on the project and luckily I got it. And I had no idea that there would be so many challenges in this survey environment. Of course, it's a wildlife refuge. There's tons of, endangered birds like flying around, running around. And, even for a dog that is not interested in birds at all, it's still just a lot of, stuff going on. So it was definitely challenging. And like Michelle was saying, there's taro farms all over the place. They're growing in water. And you can't let the dogs, just run around wild and potentially damage the crops. So we had to come up with, ways to kind of circumnavigate the taro fields and, have the dogs distance alert and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. I think I like the creative aspect of conservation dog work because not every job is the same. The targets are different, the environments are different, the challenges are different. And, I'm not the type of person to do full-time jobs because I get bored. So for me, it's kind of fun to take on something new and interesting.
So when they approached you, when you won the bid and you were like, "Yeah, I can do this." And you're like, "What is this?" So the problem, from what I can tell, are they you're finding dead ducks?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So, like, what are they finding? Is it like a duck odor because they're not? So they're live, or I'm sort of like at a loss, like because when some of the projects that we've worked on before, like they'll ask me to find something, I'm like, sure. And then there's all these other, like you said, there's all these other questions that come up, like, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And all of a sudden you kind of spin down 400 rabbit holes of all these other problems. So when you initially were approached with finding this, like what problems initially popped up?
Well, to answer your first question, yes, we were finding duck carcasses. And for the purpose of this project, it's not really feasible to separate the scent or the odor of avian botulism. Michelle can correct me if I'm saying anything wrong. So we were just training the dogs to find the Hawaiian duck carcasses, whether they had botulism
Well,
or not.
Our training aids were all ducks that had avian botulism.
So, so you couldn't separate them, right? So they're finding the dead ducks, which like kind of like go off into the pasture, not pasture,
Right.
but
So
there is.
yeah, we trained with the ducks that had avian botulism, but the dogs would also find the carcasses that didn't necessarily die of botulism, and that was also a good thing because any type of protein source could contribute to the spread of the disease as well.
Right. So the ducks were endangered. They're dying from this weird, or from this basically like a botulism thing, or from botulism toxin. So what impact initially did the dogs have for like kind of the control of this thing? Because it's an isolated area, obviously in Hawaii, but it's even further isolated. So what impact initially did they have?
I'm not sure if I understand the question. So you're saying, how did the dogs help with the effort? Or
Yeah, like I assume initially you guys were just kind of out there in waders looking for dead ducks. And how did it speed up the process? That's an oversimplification, but you're out there in waders looking for dead ducks and hoping. So how fast? Initially, like we're starting to use dogs to speed this process up. So what was the benefit of using the dogs over just, I guess, like trying to find dead ones laying out, like out in the
Michelle,
middle
do you
of
want to
nowhere?
take that? Michelle, do you want to answer
sure.
that?
Yeah. So the traditional approach to searching for the ducks, they had two ways of looking for dead ducks. And I spent hours and hours and hours prior to this project on foot. So we did pedestrian searches with binoculars, and you would, walk around all these taro fields and all these more managed wetlands looking for ducks. The other approach was someone would ride around on an ATV, and they could cover a lot of ground, but they were less likely to find a duck that was in dense vegetation. And so we actually tested, as part of this project, we tested by hiding some ducks and seeing whether dogs were able to find these hidden targets, whether the people were able to find the hidden targets, whether ATVs could find the hidden targets. And then we did another one that was more controlled time and area, was matched for pedestrian searchers. And we learned that some of this is what you would expect. The ATVs were really fast, but they didn't find them all. And the searchers on foot did a really good job, but it took them a lot longer. They didn't miss very many. But when we put a time constraint and matched the area searches, that's when the dogs really excelled. And Kyoko had two experienced detector dogs, and we had some green dogs. And the experienced detector dogs were more than 10 times as likely to find a hidden duck than a pedestrian human. And when you mix in all the dogs, and we had two green dogs, one probably wouldn't have he probably shouldn't have gotten the job, but even with his poor performance, he did better than most of the humans. And when you pool them all together, they were 5 times as likely to find the target compared to a pedestrian human searching. So that was a really neat test. But the other thing that was neat about it is the humans didn't lose their job, because sometimes they would find the duck that the dogs would miss. And so you would get 100% of the carcasses would be found, even though the humans weren't as good at it. They might find something that the dogs missed. So it's kind of a neat to overlay the two methods.
Got you. So with that, we're going to take a break for a second. We're going to be back and we're going to talk about some of the fines and we're going to continue some of the impact stuff. So don't fast forward through the commercials. We'll be back in just a second. Ray Allen Canine. It's no secret that we love Ray Allen Canine equipment. We use their products every single day at both Van Ness Canine and at Torchlight. Their mission statement says it all: to be the world leader in quality innovation for professional canine equipment for police, military, Schutzen, and ring sport. Tend to exceed their customers' expectations and deliver on time every time at a fair price. We full-heartedly believe that they've held true to that, since it is our go-to one-stop shop for everything canine, not just police dogs, but for any working dog.
This episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at Dogtra, dogtra.com. It's the e-collars that Ted and I use. It's the e-collars most police dog guys use. Dogtra.com, e-collars, bark collars, ball launchers, one-stop shop for everything you need for your working dog, dogtra.com.
One of the other sponsors we're proud to have is Hitz Canine Training Conference. It's the premier canine training seminar in the United States, packed to the brim with the world's best instructors covering important topics from admins to liability to detection work, all and tracking and everything in between. There's no better place to learn and no better place to network with other handlers, breeders, and trainers. Hitz 2022 is being held in Orlando in August. So hit them up, hitzcanine.net.
We're super happy to be represented by our good friends at Kinetic Dog Food. We've got great reviews from people all over the place. Ever since we joined up with them and partnered with them, their commitment to your dog's nutrition is top notch. KineticDogFood.com. Check them out.
Jim over at NC Canine out in North Carolina. It's the culmination of 13 years of experience in handling or training law enforcement canines. They use real-world deployments to develop their training program and rely not only on their experience, but the current experience of the nation's canine handlers to provide the best canine partner you can get. They provide pet training and police canine training based out of Four Oaks, North Carolina, and they serve the surrounding areas as well as nationally. Feel free to call them and learn more about their dog training program, police canine techniques, and methodologies.
We got a brand new sponsor, man, American Aluminum Accessories. My entire time in canine, and ever since I've been involved in the dogs, the kennel in the back of our cruisers has always been American Aluminum. Check them out. We're so happy to have them on here. EasyRiderOnline.com, EasyRiderOnline.com for everything you need from American Aluminum Accessories.
Speaking of kennels, once you get out of the car, you got to have somewhere to put them. So our friends up in Ohio at Horizon Structures make a one-stop shop for kennel. If you want a 2-dog kennel or if you want a 20-dog kennel, they got you covered. They get those things built and they drop it off at your house. All you got to have is a pad, electricity, and water, and you can put dogs in it that day. Horizon Structures can build you anything from mild to wild, and it is the one-stop shop, and you don't have to swing a single hammer. So hit them up, horizonstructures.com. All right, we're back after the commercial break with the conservation dogs from Hawaii, Michelle and Kyoko, and we were talking about dogs finding dead ducks, which I didn't even know they had ducks in Hawaii, so much less that they were endangered, which is probably why I didn't know they were there. And so the dogs and the people were using to find 100% of these dead ducks that have the problem in the taro fields, or that have the botulism virus in the taro fields. So it's a unique situation where we're using the abilities of the dog, which is a superior sense of smell to find this stuff. So that is going to go into Kyoko's camp. So, you have a background in this already. So once you were approached and once you won the bid, how did this process start? You're like, okay, I got to teach you dogs. I got to find dead ducks out in the middle of nowhere. So what did this process look like?
So when you're working with endangered species, and even if it's a carcass, you can't just go out and, find them on your own. So you have to work with an agency or a biologist that can help you with a permit that covers your handling of that target. So Michelle and USGS helped me get the training aids. I think they shipped it over from another island, and I just started training the dogs using those couple of dead ducks that they sent me. As far as, how to train them, pretty much, the same way that you guys probably train your dogs, just the direct reward type method. I start with classical conditioning, pairing the target with, their reward, whether it's food or toy. And then, we just add the hunt part to it, and then, take away the pairing, they get their reward, and then add the indication. So, so that part's the same, but I think that what's really different in this type of work is the challenges that you face acquiring the target or the training aids. Like a recent project that I'd worked on with yellow crazy ants. It's like, I don't know how to collect ants, and they're not dead either. So it's like, what do you do?
What is a yellow crazy ant?
A yellow crazy ant is a species of ant that can be very harmful to the birds in Hawaii, especially the ground nesting birds that can't get away from them. They spray a formic acid that kind of burns their skin, and the baby birds can't fly away.
Ants.
Yeah, and the other types of ants that we have that are invasive, they're more stinging ants, but this one in particular is acid spraying.
This is why they don't put this in the brochures of why you visit Hawaii. Holy shit. So it's acid spraying ants that kill birds. And so you have dogs that find these things.
Yeah, so Michelle and I worked on a project all of last year, actually, to use dogs to detect these ants. And we were lucky that Michelle had worked with or knew a trainer from Taiwan who had trained dogs on ants. So he kind of gave us his methods for collecting ants, using CO2 to put them to sleep and transfer them into your training aid containers, stuff like that. So yeah, a lot of the time spent with some of these projects will involve, learning how to collect the targets and then how to contain them properly, stuff like that.
Well, yeah, I've done several bed bug dogs, and that was a fucking nightmare. And I don't want to do it anymore. No, I'm going to stick to drugs and bombs. So with the dead ducks, Eric and I were on the Canine Paradigm podcast with Pat, Stu, and Glenn down in Australia. And, Australia is the giant island. You guys are much smaller. Did you run into problems with finding good candidates for this program? Obviously, there's an impact for the dog. There's a reason why we need the dogs. They have a great impact and there's a great need for them. However, did you struggle with finding successful candidates?
For the avian botulism project or the ant one?
For the bird one.
The bird one. Let's see. Yeah, it was a challenge. Yeah.
Just in general, so because you guys are an island and it's already like a problem getting dog or getting stuff out there, as expensive as it is.
So there aren't very many good, working dog breeders in the islands, or, there's just a few of them. And so I think it's definitely a challenge to get the right dogs, especially, for conservation projects, which might have very different needs, for every project. One project, you need a dog with tons of drive, but is not interested in chasing, prey animals. Or another project, maybe you need a dog with lots of drive, but you don't want them to be like whirling dervishes, like disturbing endangered birds in the area. So you need a dog with drive that's mellow, that type of thing. So
what dogs are you, or like, I guess, what type of dogs are you using?
So for the avian botulism project, I had a Labrador. He's actually my dog that I used, as well as another lab mix that I used. And then there was a hound dog and pit mix.
Yeah. We talked about the dead bird thing, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, oh shit, if they had to use a Malinois, that dog is going to bring it back in pieces. And like they're going to eat this bird. And I could just teaching a Malinois to retrieve something is it's an exercise that is interesting. When I talk to hunting dog guys, they're like, why would you want to do that? I'm like, well, one, I don't want him to retrieve a dead bird, and two, they're going to bring parts of that shit back to me. I don't really want that. So when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, I need to make sure I ask her like what kind of breed she has. So yeah, I mean, you're using bird dogs to find birds. That makes a lot of sense. Like using the Labradors. So finding this working stock to do it was kind of a little bit of a hurdle. Was there any other hurdle? I mean, aside from getting training aids, which I think pretty much every like discipline that we have an issue finding training aids. One of the projects we're working on now, we're having to isolate a couple of specific odors, which has been kind of a pain in the ass. So, was there any other hurdles that you didn't foresee, like when you started the program and you're like, oh man, I didn't really realize that this was going to be an issue, other than like chasing live birds and everything else?
Well, kind of back to the whole acquisition of dog topic, because it's so hard to get, good working dogs in Hawaii. I think that's one of the reasons that the nonprofit organization that Michelle and I are part of, we have a volunteer program where we kind of get the community to participate with their pet dogs. So, we don't have tons of funding to have a big kennel with, a bunch of working dogs that are imported. So rather than, doing that, we're connecting with, pet dog owners who have, higher drive than normal dogs and seeing what they're suited for. So rather than trying to go look for a dog specifically for a project, you might start working with a dog handler team and say, hey, this dog is really would be good for, such and such, this dog is really drivey, but doesn't chase birds. Maybe we can, use them in the wildlife refuge or, that type of thing. Yeah. That makes sense.
So, yeah, Michelle, on your end as a science advisor, being not from like a dog background or training background, was there any disconnect or was there any issue where you're like, oh, the dog should or shouldn't be able to do this? Or was there something that was kind of an unforeseen consequence or an unforeseen problem with the science side of it where you're like, well, we didn't anticipate this happening, and how do we work through it?
There's two. One is that dogs could also get avian botulism, so we couldn't let the dogs retrieve the carcass, because if it was an older carcass and it had fly larvae on it and that went down the dog's throat, because it's a toxin, a neurotoxin, it wouldn't be safe for the dogs to be able to get those ducks for us. So they had to alert, and then the poor human had to collect the what was left of the duck. The other challenge I didn't really anticipate is how, usually the dog just goes to source and it's really efficient. Some of our areas that we had to search, that the taro crop is quite fragile, and the farmers were very protective, and we had to win them over. And Kyoko had one dog in particular that really won over the farmers. And also she developed a proximity alert, so a distant alert. So if we might have to circumnavigate these fields, and if there wasn't a proximity alert, we didn't go inside. And if, especially during demonstrations, her mixed lab would sort of tiptoe through the mud and was just perfect for navigating those taro plants. And so the farmers could see firsthand that there was not a lot of damage to the crop. So that was kind of an unforeseen challenge.
Yeah, working dogs are not the most graceful animals. And it's more of like, just go to source and I'm going to tear everything up. And I was dealing with that at the kennel today, dealing with some of the patrol dogs and the narcotics dogs, which, we broke some stuff. And so I can kind of see that. A similar project that, not similar, but a project that is kind of going on in the background here with us. We have to be really careful about the environment that we're working in, one, because of the stuff that we're introducing, and then two, having the dogs work around that kind of stuff. is also a problem. It's not toxic to dogs or people, but it definitely like poses a problem because it's not like, you know, running a car for explosive odor. And so there is definitely an environmental concern, an environmental factor. So these farmers and like the taro fields, even though the crops are super fragile, did the ducks pose like any environmental problems to the crops, and was it transferred to humans? So, or I don't know if it can transfer to humans, or because like, I
You
didn't
would
know it
have
transferred
to
dogs,
you would
but-
have to be eating bugs off a dead duck for a
No.
human to get it.
So-
So it's
so
pretty
no.
specific to birds, and dogs
Okay.
wouldn't normally get it. But if you had them retrieving, you know, these toxic carcass, it could be a risk.
Yes, man, I'm going through little scenarios in my head about how I could get avian botulism eating some bad chicken wings or something. So, you know, so once this project takes off and starts moving, how many dogs did you guys initially have, and where are you at now?
So the study that Michelle conducted, we had 4 dogs in it, and that was 2017 to 2018. And currently, our organization is helping the Wildlife Refuge develop their new volunteer canine program. So we're helping them with the training and certification. And there's 3 dog handler teams right now. So it's kind of just in the early stages. So there'll be a lot of things to figure out, but we're hoping that it goes well and they can expand that in the future.
So those 3 teams are responsible for how much like area, or don't hit that, responsible for how much area, or, you know, how much working, I guess, capacity?
So the wildlife refuge is actually huge. I don't know how many acres it is. Michelle could probably tell you. But there are what's considered hotspots. So it's not necessarily like the dog teams would be searching the entire refuge. There are certain areas where the botulism historically might be more common, or that they pop up suddenly. So the teams would be more focused on those areas. Also, because it is a volunteer program, you know, it might help to have them survey every day, but it might not be possible due to the time constraints. So we're still figuring that part out. But, you know, the preventative surveys are really what's ideal for this type of work. Because if you just find the one carcass, then you could prevent a lot. If you kind of come in after it's already happening, it might be, you know, a little bit late. Yeah.
So an ideal number of teams, and granted, you said a lot of them are volunteers. So how many teams do you guys forecast that you would need?
I'm so bad with numbers.
You have 3.
Yeah.
So, I mean, is you like way understaffed? You need like 30?
Yeah, well, I think that, you know, just
Michelle's
the field
nodding
of
her head.
conservation.
She's
Yeah.
like, yes.
Field of conservation in general, wildlife refuges, they're always under-resourced, no matter what. So, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons that I really got into this work, was when I took this job with Michelle, working at this refuge. I saw, you know, how hard these people work, the kupu interns and the, you know, refuge biologists, and, you know, all the people involved work crazy hours to help these animals. And it was, you know, really inspiring to me. And so, yeah, so back to your question, I think there's always going to be a need for more. So we need money. I think that would.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in a second. We'll get there. Give me a second. We'll get there after the break. Speaking of which, this is probably a good time to do that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about where this program can and should go, and like how we get there. So give us just a second. Don't fast forward through the commercials again, and we'll be back in just a second.
We have a long-standing relationship with the guys over at Hitz Canine Training Conference. It's truly America's premier canine seminar. It is the largest. It is the best. They cover every important topic in the canine industry. Hundreds and hundreds of vendors, thousands of canine people there. Everybody you know in this industry is there. Ted and I will be teaching. Hitz 2022 is being held in Orlando, Florida, August 16th to the 19th. Also, check out their website, hitzcanine.net. They have other classes that they're putting out online, Zoom classes and all kinds of other things. They're offering in-person classes leading up to Hitz 2022, Orlando, Florida, August 16th to the 19th. Check it out, hitzcanine.net.
Everyone knows that I live on chicken nuggets and Coors Light. So that doesn't mean your dog should, though. Our friends at Kinetic make it a point to fuel working dogs, and they know that it can be tough, and they need high quality food, unlike me, to give them energy and the nutrients that they require. I just subsist on air and Coors Light, but the dogs can't. They actually have to work. So for that, we asked Kinetic. And Kinetic has come up with a great balance of healthy meats and grains and is made specifically for working and sport dogs. They have a full line of foods and supplements available, and they've been working to perfect their line for thousands of dogs in hundreds of departments across the U.S. You can buy it locally online or at Tractor Supply, or you can get it at Chewy. So head over to their website, kineticdogfood.com, 513-615-6904. And get them on the socials at Kinetic Dog Food.
So probably the number one product I've ever advertised for or used that does what they say is Quick Derm by Vet Care. I have it at my house. I have it at the kennel. I have it at the fun house. I have it at the doggy daycare. I have my trainers have it at their house. It is unbelievable how it works. You guys have all heard Ted and I talk about it, how we've gotten tagged by dogs, or dogs do, if you're dealing with working dogs, weird stuff happens, right? Cuts how the hell that happened? Bites, scratches, all kinds of things that happen, especially if you're doing anything in the wooded area, they get tore up. The Quick Derm by Vet Care, it is no exaggeration. It is great. So once daily treatment for any skin condition or small wounds to help stop little issues from becoming big ones. Comes in sprays, ointments, or dressing. Quick Derm is great at creating a protective barrier and promoting wound healing. The best thing, too, is they have a discount code. Get on their website, vetcare.us. That's vetcare.us. Put in the discount code 10WDR in capital letters, 10WDR for 10% off your first order.
These next guys have actually been on the show, and we instructed at the first Tripwire conference down in Florida. Jim O'Brien was a guest on the show, and he runs NC Canine, who has now come onto the show as a sponsor. Jim's been around for quite a long time, about 13-ish years, with experience handling and training law enforcement canines. He uses real-world deployments to develop training program and not rely only on their experience, but current experiences from most of their national canine teams and handlers to provide the best canine partner that you guys can purchase. They provide pet training and police canine services based out of Four Oaks, North Carolina, and they serve the surrounding areas. Feel free to give Jim a call, a text, carrier pigeon, however you want to get a hold of him to talk to him about police canine training or pets and techniques and methodologies. So hit him up at 919-438-0141 or J. O'Brien. That's JOBRIEN at NC, letter K number 9.us. Check the show notes. We'll put it there. All right, we're back with Michelle and Kyoko from Conservation Dogs of Hawaiʻi, looking for dead birds and taro fields. I don't know what the name of this episode is going to be yet, but I'm sure it'll be something that revolves around that. So before we took that last break, we were kind of talking about some of the limitations, and a lot of that is like geographic problems, and then also some of the like being a unique ecosystem and whatever else. We kind of hit on it on the first half or the first third of this episode, where we talked about the benefit of having these dogs there and like having the overlap and not missing anything. Was there or has there been a specific instance where you're like, oh man, had we not had one of these dogs, we would have missed one? And you guys have mentioned both multiple times that if you miss one, it can be a really, really bad thing, because this avian botulism transfers to all these other ducks and it gets funky real quick. So was there a specific instance where you said, you know what, I'm really, really glad we had this dog, because if not, we would have, I don't know, missed 1, 2, 4, I don't know how many. So yeah.
Should I go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, one of the greatest parts of that project is while the canine surveillance was going on, and it was happening every day, multiple searches, and we broke our surveillance into 2 windows, before Christmas and after Christmas. And with all of that surveillance, we had a really hard time finding dead ducks. So there was this huge preventative effect. And the data before and after all of that canine surveillance, daily canine surveillance, they have so much more botulism on a regular basis, more outbreaks than when the dogs were there doing so much surveillance. In fact, it was from the science part, we were not getting enough sample sizes because we were finding and removing everything. And that's why we had to start hiding the ducks so that we could do a better job of evaluating how good the tool was.
Damn. That's not necessarily a bad problem to have. But it's an interesting one from like a statistics perspective because you're dealing with like, you know, laws of large numbers and where you don't start fitting things in and you're like, oh man, we got it. So then you start hiding stuff to verify the efficacy. So Kyoko, on your side, was there an instance that you're like, oh man, had we not been out there, this would have happened?
Is it okay if I talk about a different project?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
100%.
So we at CDH, we have an invasive plant detection team or program with about 5 teams. And when we first started the program, you know, we're surveying the hiking trails on Oahu, and, you know, the dogs were able to find some of the plants that were right off the trail. And at the time, you know, I wasn't really sure if the dogs were going to be very helpful because, you know, it's a plant, you could see it, you know, maybe the dogs would be finding the same things that the humans would. But after several months of doing that and clearing the sides of the trails of, you know, the plants, the dogs started finding plants that were way off trail, like up to, you know, 30, 50 meters away from the trail. And so that's when I kind of had this realization that, you know, the dogs really are going to be helpful for this invasive plant detection. Because if you were to search visually as a pedestrian just off trail, it would take forever. And, you know, you wouldn't know where to go off trail to look for those plants. So, you know, I feel like, you know, that was my moment of realizing how valuable the dogs can be.
Yeah. And at that point, you're talking about a human, which the amount of training that takes to kind of specialize in spotting that kind of stuff when everything is green already is probably not easier than training a dog to do it. So I can kind of see like the aha moment. And that's something that's a similar theme that we have a lot of these episodes. It's like, oh, is there a time when, you know, and this not necessarily this is a different episode, or this is a different outcome than like some of the explosive stuff where it's like, I'm glad the dog was here to find a bomb. But you know, I mean, it's an interesting outcome because you have like a traditional, like I've been part of those. My brother-in-law is a zoologist and they go out and count chickens all the time, or I don't know chickens. There's some kind of weird, I don't know what it is. I train dogs. It's some kind of bird. I don't know. It's like a Western, I don't know. He's going to watch this and be like, he's going to text me and tell me what it is. And I'm not going to. That's all right. He likes me anyway. It's fine. But they go out and count some kind of chicken all the time. And I'm like, it's some kind of weird wild chicken thing. But he was like, oh, we have a problem identifying him. And he showed me a picture of it. And I'm like, why the hell? Like, how can that be like a problem? Like, how do you not know what that thing is? He's like, well, you got to be able to do it from like 150 yards away with binoculars. And I'm like, oh, okay. So it does require a shitload of training. And I can't imagine that training a dog is easier than training a human with a 4-year degree like my brother-in-law has in identifying chickens. So that's a fantastic aha moment. It happens all the time. And it's like, oh man, I'm so glad the dog was here. So we talked a little bit about the limitations that you guys have. Where do you, so we've covered, the episode started by talking about finding dead ducks. And then we talked about the fire spitting ants. What are those things called?
Yellow crazy ants.
Yellow. I was going to call them yellow death ants. That sounds way better. The yellow crazy ants. And now so what other stuff do you guys find? So we got ants, we got dead birds, and you've got plants. So you have a whole like host of ecological things like invasive species. So what else do you guys look for?
So right now we have a rodent and mongoose detection program just starting out. And so rodents are obviously,
right,
pretty known for being destructive, but mongooses are, they're not a rodent, but it kind of looks like a ferret, and it was introduced to Hawaii as a control method for rodents, but it turned out that the rodents are nocturnal and the mongooses are active during the day, so it didn't work out at all.
That's
and
convenient.
The mongooses are highly destructive, so that's something that we're looking into contributing to that effort. There are a couple of main Hawaiian islands, including Lanai and Kauai, that do not have mongooses. So, trying to implement a biosecurity program to help prevent the introduction of mongooses would be something that we'd be interested in doing. So, yeah, right now we're talking to different biologists and agencies about that. But really, there's an endless amount of applications for the dogs, and we're constantly researching stuff and talking with other people.
That is super. I would have never guessed that mongooses would be a problem. Wow. So we've got the plants, we've got the plants, ants, birds, and the silky coated penis weasels, which are the mongooses. So those things they're nasty. So that is crazy and this is entirely related to California, Hawaii, because like if you were in the mainland, the United States, like we have a problem here with like similar things, but we deal with it a lot differently. We have a ton of land mass, so we don't really have the problems that you guys have. One with sourcing, and two with dealing with like the ecological impacts. So in an ideal world, you guys have struggled with funding, and how old is CDH?
So I originally started the organization in 2016 with the goal of doing cancer detection with the dogs, but that didn't really work out. So I switched gears, and in 2019, we decided to focus on environmental conservation. So it's really only been 2 years or so.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So currently, where can we find, for people listening to this, we'll put this in the show notes, but where can we find information about what you guys have going on?
Sure. Our website is conservationdogshawaii.org, and you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Conservation Dogs Hawaii.
Excellent. And so you guys have had a problem with funding as well. And I assume that there's a way that we can PayPal, and we don't want to send anything in the mail because it takes forever to get there.
Oh yeah, we have a PayPal donation link on our website, and we also just launched a fundraising T-shirt, sticker, and tank top campaign. So check it out on our social media. Excellent. If you could buy a shirt or something, that'd be great. Yes,
we'll put that in the show notes. So for everybody listening, head over there. We'll put it in the show notes. Just click the link. It goes straight there. I am at Ted_Summers on Instagram and on Facebook, as well as the podcast is working_dog_radio. And then obviously HRD is still running. I am instructing a blue line in St. Louis this month. I'm not sure when this episode is going to air, but it's about the same time. Eric and I will be there, assuming he's over the Rona, which I hope he will be. We're going to be doing the HRD Dog and Pony Show, and it sounds like we have some SWAT integration courses coming up too, so that'll be fun. But that's at HRD Police Canine, letter K number 9, and then I'm also at Torchlight Canine, letter K number 9, and Torchlight Pets, and Eric is at Ridgeside, Ohio, and then Van S Canine, both on the Instagrams and on the Facebook. So be sure to follow us. And if Eric were here, he would yell at everybody for people to follow the show, but don't follow both of us. So most of my stuff is business anyway. So Michelle and Kyoko, this episode was super interesting because I had no idea. Like that you're looking for ants, dead birds, and plants, and apparently mongooses. So that was not in the brochure when you visit Hawaii. The fucking acid spitting ants and the dead birds. So, but no, it's been super interesting, and it's been an episode that we've wanted to do for quite a while. And I'm super glad that you guys came on. But yeah, thanks for coming on, guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thanks. That was fun.
All right, guys, this episode has been brought to you by great sponsors of ours. Please don't skip through this. Take a listen to them. One of our oldest sponsors and great friends of ours are the people down at Highland Canine down in North Carolina. I really like them. We see them at all the conferences. I know a lot of people have been to their school for dog trainers. They've been on the podcast. Highland Canine, they're a full service canine and pet dog training business where they can train you to be a trainer. They can get you a dog. They have handler classes. They have supervisor classes. They have trainers courses for just LE. They have them for anybody who wants to be in the dog business, be a dog trainer of any kind. Check them out. Their website is tacticalpolicecaninetraining.com, tacticalpolicecaninetraining.com. If you are smart, you'll go down there in the winter. It is North Carolina. It is warm. You get to work dogs. It's no joke school, guys. You're not going down there for a month and rushing through it. They're actually trying to make you real deal dog trainers. Tacticalpolicecaninetraining.com.
Next is a sponsor that's been with us for quite a while, Dogtra. I love Dogtra stuff, and they continually keep bringing out new products. One of the things that I've been using a lot lately is the new Tone Box. If you're a pet trainer or if you train a lot of police officers, and I harp at my guys all the time about timing, and this thing literally compares to the remote. And when you're using the remote, whether you're using knit, constant, or vibrate, it makes a noise, so you can get the timing down 100% consistent. And so I can demonstrate how to do an out with an e-collar immediately, quickly, and it is so effective that I can't believe that it took me forever to figure it out to get that. They've also got these new comfort feather, like titanium things that go on the collars that are fantastic for making sure we got contact. It actually has 6 points, and this comes in 2 sizes, and it's a titanium feather thing. They're awesome. They got comfort contact points for the bark collars, the YS600, one of my favorite things. I have about 50 of them at the kennel, and it is dead silent. And I put them on all the pet dogs, and I can leave them on because they have the comfort contact points, and they're fantastic. All this stuff you can get at dogtra.com. And if you use the discount code WDR10, you get 10% off a single item over $200. So that covers the ball trainer. That covers the 1900 hands free, which is my personal favorite for all the big dogs. It covers the 2-dog system, the 202C, which I use for the 2-dog pet guys, and fantastic. So dogtra.com, or go to @dogtraofficial on all the socials. That's Facebook, Instagram, all those places. So hit them up, dogtra.com.
Guys, I don't even shop any other sites when I'm looking for everything for dogs. Our one-stop shop for anything pet dog training and police dog training, hunt dog training, anything you need, you can find at rayallen.com. They have been doing it forever. We have a great relationship with them. Again, they're at all the conferences. You can stop up and talk to them. They have more stuff there than any place. rayallen.com. They are amazing. We have a great, really, really good relationship with those guys. Like I said, I get on their website. I do not look anywhere else. I just get on Ray Allen. Why should I? Fill up my cart, pay it, boom, shipping. Here we go. Everything's coming. rayallen.com. And guess what? We do have a discount code for them. Working Dog Radio for 10% off. It's all one, Working Dog Radio, and it's all caps. Check them out, rayallen.com.
I'm not too ashamed to admit that I used our own discount code to buy stuff for the kennel. We have American Aluminum next. They're a new sponsor for moving forward. They have been around for quite a while. They manufacture a wide variety of products, from the high-quality cam lockers and toolboxes to a huge line of products designed to meet the ever-changing needs of law enforcement community. Back in 1992, due to the demand for safe, secure transport for a nearby law enforcement department's canine, they introduced the very first Easy Rider canine. They have continuously grown and expanded products, catering to the needs and wants of the valued customers and high-profile clientele. Over the years, as the needs have changed, they have evolved and expanded their products to include inmate transport systems, canine training aids, canine inserts, contraband, containment, and animal control systems, just to name a couple things. So you can find them at easyrideronline.com. That is Easy Echo Zulu Rider Online.com. You can find them on the socials at American Aluminum Accessories. And then you can hit them up toll free, 1-800-277-0869. You don't have to worry about writing all that down. We're going to put it in the show notes. So just scroll down to the bottom, write it down, click the link, takes you straight there out into your phone.
Our first sponsor we ever had, he's our ride or die. He's been with us since the beginning, is Arno over at ALM Canine Equipment. His stuff is so good. Ted, gets suits. Ted's suit, he's had it for a long time. Arno's fixed it. He's taken 1 million bites on it. It still holds up. The thing's amazing. I've got a suit from him. I love it. Use it all the time. But the main thing that I really love about Arno is his hidden sleeves are ridiculously amazing. They are the best. And his tugs. I usually buy tugs from Arno by the box load. He'll send me a whole bunch of them. I hand them out to the handlers, new handlers when they come in, experienced handlers. They last for a long time. They're amazing. The craft work is great. Arno's doing all the sewing there. He's got pre-made suits. He can do custom-made suits, everything you need out there. And he's out there in sunny Las Vegas. Get on his website, check him out, almcanineequipment.com, almcanineequipment.com. Discount code WD Radio, all caps, 10% off your first order. Check him out.